computer. Oops. All right, so like I said, today we're gonna just kind of cover, I'm trying to fill in, there's a lot of little holes. We got into Photoshop and we've done quite a bit, but there's a lot of little things that I want to kind of cover. They're like things that'll take like 20 seconds, some of them. Some will be a little bit more advanced. Don't save that. All right, so I'm gonna start by opening up a raw file. And again, if you're not shooting raw, camera raw, I think you will at some time in the very near future. The new iPhone is coming with they call it Apple RAW, Apple Photo RAW. So it's going to be an additional way to do it. And again, it's something like this picture. When you open the raw version, you can see before we open, there's a lot of shadows going on. So what we're going to do is try to boost this up a little bit. And you can only do so much when you're opening it from a raw file. I'm sorry, from a JPEG file, but from a raw file, we're gonna have a lot more capabilities. So I'm gonna just kind of open that up. But again, if there's anything that we're covering that you're not sure of, let me know. So looking at this picture from the beginning here, I can say I got a couple issues. One, it's a little bit off. It's not, I didn't shoot level on this. Okay, I didn't have a tripod. I was just kind of photographing. And then I can see my lens got some dirt up here. So we'll clean that all up. We're a little hot, a little bit overexposed back in here. And then this is definitely well underexposed. There's a lot more detail in here that we can gather up from that. So I'm just gonna kind of real quick do some basic adjustments. The temperature I think feels pretty good. Let me just see, maybe warm it just a hair. I'm going to pull up the exposure a little bit, but if I go too far, right, it blows it out. So I got to be delicate here with this. I'm going to just a fraction. And the contrast, I'm pulling it down a little bit. That's going to bring it out. Highlights, I'm going to take that down. You can see already I got rid of some of that brightness over there. I'm going to pull my shadows up. I'm trying to bring out this area a little bit. Whites down a little bit, the blacks up a little bit. And then we have the texture and a little clarity coming in, a little dehazing down here. And we're getting better. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. I'm going to kind of show you how we can do that. So we've kind of gone over these basic things already. Again, I'm not too worried about the sky. I'll fix that later. But I'm just kind of looking to see if there's anything else I can do here. Just some basic edits without going too far. Again, I don't want to overdo it. I'm going to leave it there and we're going to go from there. Now, things we haven't done are some other things that we can do in the raw mode. It will let you crop. I don't usually crop in here, so I will let that be, but I can do a rotate. And I'm going to just rotate because I know it's off a little bit, so I may as well just do it now and be done. And I got my grid there, so I'm just kind of making it level. I think that's pretty close. A little bit better there. There is a healing brush, spot removal. I'm going to just do this in Photoshop. It'll just become a little bit easier, I think, down the line. But I can, let me just see. Because right now it's kind of taken from another point, and I don't want to do that. I like the other brush better. Now, this is kind of nice. This is, we're doing selective edits. And what we're going to do is we're going to play with, I just want to brighten up this area, right? I'm not doing a bit too much. So I'm going to do is kind of bump the exposure up. I got it bumped up to 1. And what I'm going to do is when I paint, I'm just painting in this area. So I'm not making everything brighter, just these really dark shadows here. I'm just trying to brighten those up a little bit without opening up the whole photograph. So what I'm doing is just kind of increasing the exposure just a little bit, kind of painting in, we call it painting light, painting the brightness in with that. So this is a nice way, and this is a really good tool in here to do this. That might have been too much there. Let me bump that back a second. Yes, question.
So I can see what the overlay is doing, and it's, obviously lightening it up and it's
Mhm.
not going over the other image and, over exposing the other stuff.
Yes.
But what does overlay mean exactly? Like what are
Overlay
these
just
mesh?
literally means just on top. So it's kind of,
Oh,
think of it as tracing paper. If you've ever done tracing paper and put tracing paper on top of something, you can kind of see through it. That's
got
kind of
it.
what we're doing. We're just kind of working just it's on top of these areas as an overlay, but we're not. It's just really kind of affecting this area, but it's a slow
Okay.
kind of subtle thing. I mean,
Is it possible?
likewise. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But is it also possible to use the overlay on those trees underneath El Capitan and like not go through El Capitan exactly?
No, it's going to lighten that whole area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not that selective,
Got it.
um, but it's somewhat selective. Does that make sense? No, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like when we select the sky and it kind of gets in there, and it will like if we select sky later, it'll kind of
Hmm.
get even around these branches. No, it's not that good.
So it's a bit
Uh,
more of like a broader kind of brush.
yeah, yeah.
Got
Now you could selectively come back in here later in Photoshop, kind of make a mask, and there is a mask option here where you can do that, and you can kind of see what I'm doing. Um, so we can come back in and paint it back out with a mask going from black to white.
it. Hmm.
Um, Again, it's just a kind of a choice on how you do it. There is the one thing about Photoshop is there's 10 ways to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
ultimately I'm trying to show you ways and you'll pick which way you want to work best. And what I'm doing here can be done in actual Photoshop, the main part, without being in the raw. It's just we're here, so I'm just trying to show you some of the other elements of the raw thing.
Got it.
Um, you can do it what we call a gradient overlay, where we can put color and tint in. And don't mess with that too much in here, but you can. Um, you can also do it like a filter that's going to blur things out. Red eye, you could do it here. The problem is we don't have much red eye anymore. I mean, it's kind of amazing that the way the cameras work now, they half the time take away that red eye kind of situation. But these are just kind of other tools that are in the raw. And then again, as we open it, if we open it as an object, a smart object, we're able to come back in. So if we start the process and work this and go, you know what, I didn't quite like that, we can come back in and then double click and go from there to make those corrections. Now, the one problem of a smart object is it doesn't let you do the healing brush. Okay, so what I'm going to do to kind of cheat this out is I'm going to go to my layer and I'm going to layer image, layer. I want to make basically a duplicate of this smart object. So we're going to make a new smart object via a copy. And what this is going to do is it's going to make a um, new smart object of it, which I'm going to rasterize later, because then I always want to kind of go back to this if I want to. So it made a copy. The cool thing about this is if I make a copy here, it doesn't affect this one. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here, go back just so you can see that. I'm going to really push the temperature up. So there's quite a difference. And it is updating, but it should only update that copy instead of, yeah. So if I turn that copy off, you can see the original. Does that make sense? So what we did is we duplicated that smart object, and whenever we make changes to that smart object, it's only affecting this layer of smart object, not the one below. So I'm going to kind of just leave that alone for now. And we're here. And again, I can't use my healing brush because I want to get rid of this guy and clean this all up. I'm going to just rasterize that layer. So I'm going to go to layer, rasterize, and then rasterize the smart object. And now it's back to being just a normal layer file. We can come back to it later as we go. And I'm just going to kind of real quick come in here and just kind of healing brush these things up, because this is just kind of, it's way too dirty up here. I'm just going to bump it up a little bit, brush that out. It's a pretty solid blue sky. Might be, might be a time to put in a sky replacement because it is kind of mundane, not too much going on. And I don't think the sky replacement will work. Oh, it will work on the smart object. I'll be dang. Let's try that then. Let's leave that alone. Let's come to the smart object. And I'm going to do a replacement. Let's do the sky replacement here. They keep getting this, making this thing better and better all the time. Now remember, I have some skies somewhere, but I'm not going to go too nuts. Ultimately, I want to kind of keep it consistent because I've got this reflection down here. Okay, so if I make that the sunset, you're going to see the sunset doesn't reflect in the water. So I'm going to just create all kinds of problems for myself trying to get that sky into the water. So I'm just going to keep it blue as the way it is. And I'm just making sure it got rid of. It's still actually blue. Great. That's crazy. They're still in there. Left those dots. Yeah, because I'm looking at my, sometimes my screen gets dirty and I'm like, so it replaced the sky. This is the new sky, but it left those images, those dots in there. So obviously I got to get rid of those first anyway. So let me just cancel that. We're going to go back to here and I'll do the sky replacement here. Well, that was not good. I thought it was going to take care of it. Okay, so here we are here. It's a little bluer. I got to watch the clouds. I don't want to put too many clouds in because it'll look nice, but they don't reflect in the water, right? So I have to be very, very careful in this particular case of what sky I end up dropping in. And I could import one. Let me just see real quick while we're here. We got a brief second. Desktop. See if I can find those again. Where were they? Oh, I'm gonna spend an hour looking for them. Forget it. Now we're gonna keep that blue. Call it a day. We're good. You can see it drop those in, and we have it there. Now it's because it's on top, and you can see it made a mask. There's the mask. Even if I turn on this layer, it should be there. Does it not? No, it's not reflecting on that one. All right. So we've got the clouds, well, the sky cleaned up a little bit. We've got a little bit of a yellow tint going on just to kind of give it some color. We've opened this up down here so we can start to see some of the details without getting rid of the shadows, right? We don't want to get rid of everything because if we do, then it starts to look too fake. Okay. And I'm sure that's typically not what you're looking for. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I want to kind of I'm going to say I want that to be a part of the picture permanently. So I'm going to do some effects. What I'm going to do is kind of merge layers. And what this is going to do is take the sky replacement and make it a part of the photo. So now it is all part of that photo because I'm going to get into some effects here that I want to kind of go through. And it will get all wacky when I'm dealing with all those layers of the sky. So up here, there's a thing called the filter gallery. Now we started going through some of these effects, filters, effects over here. But if we go to filter gallery, it's a quick and easy way to do this. A new window pops and it's loading up the picture down here. I can see it's loading. It's a big picture. Maybe I should have gone lower, smaller picture. And what this will do is give you options. Okay, so all of these options are available from the drop down, but what it does is it lets you just quickly click and see. Okay, and it shows you the effects and you can see the adjustments you can make in those particular effects depending on what they are. And I can guarantee you half of these aren't going to work or look anything good. Others will. So this is kind of more of a, we'll zoom in a little bit so you can see, they call it cutout, but it's kind of basically taking the colors. And again, remember with the photograph, we got millions of colors. This is bringing it down to a few simple colors in there. And there is a lot of going on. And again, that sky is really going to whack it out here. Probably should have had something with more definition in it. Let me just drop the layers down and see if it's doing it. No, it's not going to help at all. Move that back up. Simplify a little bit. Okay, and the fidelity, that's not helping there. So I'm just trying to, again, I'm looking to see if I get some kind of look and feel that I like. And what's going on here is that it's just totally losing El Capitan. So that filter is not going to work. Again, looking at things as a plaster. I don't know why that sky gets all weird. It's all grayed out. But it's a way that you can kind of look through things quickly. So it's like, all right, I'm not happy with those. Let's go to the brush effects. Maybe they're going to work better. Oh, that's why I've got things down here. I've got multiple layers. So let me do that. Delete that one there. I'll show you what that is in a second here. So is that going to work better now? It's still getting weird. So it's adding in this case, the effect. It's kind of an ink outline. It's kind of getting a little weird. I don't know if that's something you want, but it's a way that you can kind of work with the picture and give it some additional effects or texture depending on what you're doing. So I'm zooming in here and you can see the strokes aren't too terribly hard, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's a bit artistic on it. Yeah, I'm gonna run out of memory. Okay, ignore, too big a picture to work with. Let me do, let me just find one here I like. Halftone, I like halftone patterns. So the halftone kind of gives you that photographic look that what you would find in a newspaper, how they print. And it's based on the colors that you've had preset. So I have this darker brown and a kind of a can set. So you want to set your colors first before you, knowing you're going to go into the halftones and play with that. And then this will shape the size of the dots. And this is going to move the contrast. I want to pull that way down in there. Again, this kind of gets a little weird. And I'm going to pull the dots down a little bit. So when I zoom in, you're going to see the dots, right? So it's just a really cool effect that kind of works, gives things some kind of style. So I did this effect, but let's say I like this, but I also want to do something else on it. So what you can do is you can hit down here the plus. And what it's going to do is give you a new effect. So it's going to keep the halftone in there, and then it's going to give you something else. So let's say I want to do a dark stroke. So we'll see how that looks. It's doing the dark stroke on there. So it's adding the dark stroke on top of the halftone effect. Okay. Again, so you can turn those off, but what this allowing you to do is to create effects on top of effects, which is really nice. Okay, so if we just did the normal drop downs, you don't get this option of doing effects on top of the effects. Okay, and I'm gonna click OK. Now it brought it in as one layer. Okay, and it just made the adjustment on the layer. A better way of doing that, I'm gonna undo that, is I'm going to up here first, convert this layer back to a smart object, and then come to my filter gallery. And those are still there because I just had used them. And now click OK, and it's going to bring them in. You can see down here, they are a smart filter. So if I want to change something, I can click on the gallery again, and it brings it back up. And I can go, hey, that's too much. I don't want that. Okay. And we're going to click OK. Now, think about, okay, we've got this kind of brown sepia tone. What if I want, I don't know, blues or greens or something? Let me change my colors real quick. Let me go into the green there, and I'm going to put this as, we'll do complementary, a nice kind of a red, pinkish red. There we go. And then I'm going to go into the smart filters. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo that. And it should bring in those other colors. Let me just see. Yeah, it did. Real hard to see. They're subtle. Should have, right? Let me double check. It should be affecting the new colors. Let me go back to my halftone. It didn't do it. I thought it was going to flip my colors back out, but they're the same colors. All right. So much for that. Let's click OK and be done. Let me turn that off. And I'm going to do a new, see if I can do a gallery on top of the gallery. Okay, now it's coming in different. So I had to do a new one. So now it's into those greens and the pink. And I click OK. And I want to turn that one off. And now we're just into, yep. So now we're just into the greens and pinks. Okay, so it did make a change, but I had to do a new filter gallery. In that case, I can just kind of delete that one. And I have the one that I'm working with here. And again, it's not a permanent change to the photo. It is a smart filter. So therefore, I can turn it on and off if I want to. And I can even come back in here and play with this picture to potentially darken the sky a little bit or do something like that, just to kind of get my filter to work better where it's not so kind of washed out up here. It's still pretty, no, it's not as pretty as I would like. Okay, so again, it's kind of working in tandem with what you're trying to do in order to kind of work it out. Let me just kind of turn that off. I'm just going to get rid of that. Get rid of the whole filter effect. We're back to the picture. There is a cool thing like the blur. And I want to do, let me just see which one I want. Do the iris blur. Okay. And what this is doing is I'm getting an effect where part of it is blurred and part of it's not. And you could do the same thing with a tip or a tilt shift in here. And what I'm doing is kind of selecting an area that I want to be kind of unblurred. Now the thing is working really slow right now. This is at the max. So you can kind of see this area is not blurred and this area is. And I need to blur less. Let me see which ways I'm going to work here. I'm sorry, the computer's being slow here.
Probably because it's a raw file, right?
Well, it was a raw file, but now it's just big. It was just a big file when I started. So, because it was, you can see down here, it's like 40 megs, it's pumping up to 90, but the computer is just getting a little whack. Let me turn off the iris and go with the tilt shift effect. I'm going to say here is my center area that I want. And what it's doing is going to blur the top and blur the bottom. That's the kind of a tilt shift effect that's doing. I'm going to extreme it out. And it kind of, you can see what it's doing is blurring the bottom, blurring the top. Now that's way too much, okay? But it's possible you might want something like that for a portrait where you're going to keep the face in focus and really kind of blur out the background where you can kind of see it, but it's not quite there, not so defined. And again, this helps bring the focus in on that. It's just working so slow here. All right, I'm going to just click OK and let it come back over and get off of this before everything totally crashes. Again, because we're in a smart object, we get that option here, and I can double click on the blur gallery and it's going to come back up. Okay, so again, it's kind of a way to kind of make things look a little more professional sometimes, because it's kind of weird. Anybody watch football? I love football, right? That's like the favorite time of the year right now. And they've been using these cameras in the especially in the end zone after they score a goal or a field goal or a touchdown. And they're this extreme aperture where the players are in focus and everything else is kind of out of focus. And it looks really nice. And this is the kind of effect they're doing, but they're just kind of built it into that camera with the lenses that they're using. So this kind of blur, sharp areas is really kind of really dramatic. And you'll see it, like I said, you'll see it there. You'll see it also in photographs, portraits a lot. And again, you can fake it out. Okay, so this is the way that it's very hard to do this sometimes with your lenses or depending on what you had, but it will do it. And it's like if you have your iPhone and you shoot in portrait mode, that's exactly what this is doing. Okay, so you can make your own portrait mode in Photoshop. Because you didn't shoot portrait mode doesn't mean you can't get that look and feel. Again, you can bring it into Photoshop. And really the one that works best is the iris. It kind of is like it's the center round area, that's kind of a face area. And you can adjust that and pick points within that so it doesn't have to stay exactly round. You can kind of scope it out. But right now my computer's getting a little slow. So I'm gonna actually close this whole file and don't save. Let me open up something else that we can work with here quickly that will be just as dramatic, but not as intense. I'm just going to go with the JPEG. Let me just go down here. In Yosemite, there is there are a couple groves of sequoia trees. And actually right now, Sequoia National Park has got a forest fire going on. But they have these kind of things here. Again, it's in the south. The big grove is in the south part of Yosemite. And I'm just gonna, I got big trees on my mind. And the sequoias usually do pretty well with the fires. But and we'll open this one because we've got a little burn in there I can see, and we've got some stuff going on that I want to get into. So here's a picture. It's a JPEG, so this will work hopefully a little bit easier with the computer. And you can see there's been a fire through here and this part is burned. And these trees have lived, sometimes 2,000 plus years, some of these trees, the big ones. It's amazing. But there's some problems. Now, as I look at this as a photographer, I shot this with a wider lens. I'm getting some curvature. I'm getting where the trees are starting to come in and it's not real. I mean, it looks good, but we know in real life they're going to be less. And then I've got obviously up here some other trees that are kind of distracting from that. And let me just see. And of course we got my dots again, right? From my camera, blue sky day. So I'm just going to dupe this first. And I'm going to go with my healing brush and I'm just going to get rid of some of those dots. I got to clean my screen too, just so you know. Get more dots. I don't know what to do with. That's all that. Now I'm in my spot healing brush, right? I'm going to just get rid of this. I'm going to see if that'll go away right away. Boom! Look at that. And I don't like this one over here. I don't know if it's going to be a problem later, but I'm just going to take it off right now because it's just bugging me. Let's see the spot there, the spot there left. So here you can see in a matter of a couple quick clicks, we got rid of some of those dots in the sky, but also those kind of trees that were kind of in the frame that I did not like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to make the trees straight. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my transform tools. Now, there's some warping tools, and then there's just a transform here. Now, I know a perspective is designed for like if you have a building and you want to make that building look straight up and down because it will deal with a couple planes. So I'll try to get a building that's kind of twisted. I'll look for something and we can show you that. But I think what I'm going to do in here is I want to do the distort. And what it did, it gave me some handles to work with. And as I pull these, it's gonna twist the picture. Okay, so at this point, it's just gonna highlight and pull these up. Shouldn't you put a mask on before you spot? You could, but I knew I wanted to get rid of those things permanently, so I didn't really worry about it. It really depends on how you're gonna be working with that photo. When I deal with like a face and getting maybe some blemishes or something like that, I typically do. In this case, I just, for the sake of speed, did not. Okay. And what I'm doing actually now here is I'm straightening the trees. Okay, so it's kind of a give and take to get the trees back to straight. And that one's pretty straight now. Not too much. I'm going to go there a little bit. Again, I don't want to go too far because it's going to distort. This one's going to get a little weird. I don't want to get too weirded out. But you can see here, you can kind of do that. I'm going to pull this up. You can go all over the place with it, right? So I'm just kind of tucking that in a little bit, tucking that out. This one's, I think, going to come in a little bit. And that's going to, so what I've done is kind of somewhat straighten those trees from a visual standpoint. They're off a little bit, and we'll go back on. You can see here's before, here's after. But this is kind of a, they call it, it's the warps, but you can kind of bend things. And a very, very helpful with kind of straightening things up. Because all the time we get, lens distortion where things get kind of twisted a little bit. This doesn't work very well. I can tell you on human faces, the face will get all like Salvador Dali kind of thing. So you don't really want to do that. You don't want to play too much with the transform tool when you're dealing with people or faces, because believe it or not, we look at so many people, we've seen so many faces in our life, things look distorted quickly and you're like, well, something's off. Okay. But with something like the trees, they're very organic. It's very hard to tell. With the mountains, something like it, you can kind of get a little bit of freedom in there to play with the distort, transform, and get in there. Warp will take different points, and I'm going to just kind of grab here. What it's doing is it's doing the same thing, but it kind of twists it even more. I mean, you get these Bezier curves, which bend it and give you a nice smooth arc, but it may or may not work. Again, it's worth trying various ones to see what's going to work for you. But again, you don't want to get too curvy, right? Because then they're going to go, well, that's not right. Trees don't curve it really. I'm going to pull that a little bit. And again, I'm working with this case, the warp tool. And again, it's just a file. It's not a smart object. If I did a smart object, I would get a little more control. In the sense I could do it later. So if I convert that to a smart object, convert smart filters, which they're the same. Filters are objects, the same. And let me see if I can get into my transform again. Again, sometimes you'll get these things where they don't quite work, and they do. And if I do that, no, it's not gonna give me a secondary on off with that. Okay. So we are there with that. We've done our healing brushes. We're good. So again, the galleries, filter galleries, are just like pulling these things up. Now again, they don't have everything. Like the blurs aren't in the gallery. This distort, the sharpen, they're not there. The render, this is weird. I'm gonna make a new layer just so you can see what that looks like, what they do. These, I have no idea why they're here, tell you the truth. You can do some frames, and there's some really cool things. It's called tree. Watch this. It's going to pull up a tree. And I'm not quite sure why this is in there, but what do we got? 34 different types of trees, and it tells you what they are. From aspen to pine. I think there's even a sequoia in here somewhere. Let me see. Cypress. redwood. Okay, so it's close. And you can adjust these things. Like you can say how many branches it has and how thick are the branches. Now you can make these total adjustments. And we're going to make this, and you're going to see it's like, what the heck is going on? You can change where the light comes from based upon what you want. And we're just going to say that's good. So click OK, and it draws the tree and drops it in. It's like a whole new layer. I don't know why they're there. I think it may be something to do with kind of architectural rendering is why they have these weird little filters in there. So you get under render. So there's trees and there's clouds. Now the clouds I've used before, and the clouds are based on the color palette you have over here. It kind of really gives you kind of a cool texture sometimes. So I don't play with it too much. And you saw I just dropped it on top of the tree, which was not good. But then it does stuff like, this is, I'll tell you, this is one you might use, is flame. So I need to draw a path. Let me draw one first here. I think that will work. The path is longer than people. Okay. Yeah, so my path was too long in picture. So it does these flames. Now, oftentimes you're trying to, you might want to, I don't know, add flames to, I don't know, a logo or a picture or something. And this will let you Photoshop in some flames, and there's various different ones. It's kind of like a real directional kind of thing. That one's going out. Different angle. We'll select that one and build it in. I'm click OK, and it's actually going to put flames on the tree. Okay. So again, that might be something that might work. I think I've used the flames before once or twice, but it's kind of in there. It's kind of a weird little thing with that, but it's got those tree renders. I'm gonna get rid of the path. All right. And then what else we got under there? Oops. Render, clouds, lighting effects. That might be okay. I don't want that now. Cancel. Turn it off. Where it's going to give you some like lens flares, and that's basically where you get this kind of spot. Okay, so if you want to kind of put that on a photograph, kind of give it a kind of a key highlight. That's what happens when the light comes through the lens a certain way. You know, so that might be something you want to add, and that's in the render area. And let's see what the lighting effects they've got on it. They keep updating and adding things. Let me see what they're putting in. Something that's visually intense, I can tell you. Okay. So what this is doing is kind of lighting, almost kind of vignetting kind of feel. Let's see what it's going to do. That's getting weird in here. I'm just going to click OK. It got weird. See how beautiful that was? Yeah, didn't do anything. All right, let me close this and we're going to get a new file going. We'll save. A couple more little areas I want to kind of go through with you guys. Let me just find something here in a second. We'll use this. All right. So just going through, we've done 99% of all these things. I wanted to show you the brush and how to mix things real quick. So I've got this, just ignore this picture. We may come to it, we may not. Let me do a new layer. And I'm going to paint in first. I'm just going to paint on this layer. Fill this in. And I could use the paint bucket if I wanted, but I've already got the brush out. What we're going to do is kind of transition. Now you can do this with a gradient, but the problem with the gradients kind of go over the whole area, and they work well with straight, but they don't work well with something that might be curved. So as you start to get into potentially illustrations for those that are going to be illustrators and animators, and it's dealing with stuff like in the backgrounds, you might have a building or a light or a mountain or something that's kind of more organic, and the gradient tool doesn't work incredibly well with that. So I'm going to show you a way to kind of blend these two colors together to give it kind of an even mesh. So it's going from green to pink. Now, one of the probably the coolest tools, and it's relatively new, is called the mixer brush. Okay, so it's on the brushes, and it's a mixer brush. And then up here we've got, let me pull this down so you can see it. Get this out of the way. A lot of adjustments, okay, that you can kind of make with this. And what it does is basically kind of enlarges, I'm showing that layer, yes. It will blend those together. So I'm just going to real quickly go. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of blend. Now it's giving me these kind of lines. Let me just make sure we get these little dots. I don't want that. So we do too much stroking in there. So what I have to do is kind of go through and make my adjustments so it's going to load the way I want. And there is some presets in here also. So we're gonna go wet. That's not doing it. So I don't want this banning going on. So I'm trying to find maybe one that's going to do it. Still kind of a little better if I wash it. I think I can play with the adjustments here. Get this just right. What I'm trying to do is kind of get rid of this, in this case, solid line between the pink and the green, and start to kind of blend them together. So it looks like it's transitioning from one to the other. And we're not quite there yet, but this blend tool will let you kind of get into detail areas, small areas, where the gradient tool doesn't quite do that. This will let you blend and start to kind of move the color around. And again, it's just coming back and kind of, at some point, you're going to get the preferences the way you want and see what's kind of working best for you in this. And again, we're just trying to stroke it over. So I think a lot of short little strokes are going to work predominantly for this. And it's not completely even, but I think we can get that there at some point. Okay. Now, again, it's a way to kind of blend it without working. And especially because now we're really think of this as your painting. So those that have done painting, watercolors, oils, acrylics, this is kind of a way to blend those separate colors together in a Photoshop world. And if you zoom in, they're pixels, okay? So you can really kind of get pretty detailed with that. Now, other tools that you're probably going to want to use to blend is the blur tool potentially, or the sharpen, or the smudge tool. So let me go to smudge first. I'm going to give it a little bit bigger brush. And what I'm doing here is just kind of pushing the colors. Oh, don't slow down on me. Around. So it's kind of, it really, the icon is like a little finger, like your finger painting, and it really kind of is. So if you've ever used charcoal and kind of smudged, that's what we're doing here. We're smudging with your finger. Okay, in this case, it's a paintbrush. Getting this, it's really slowing down here. Other things in here. Let me see if I get this up. So you're still thinking. I don't have that much open. It's just got big today and didn't like it. Let's see. We'll catch up here in a second. Okay. The blur tool, I'm going to get a bigger brush, will blur items so you can kind of, it blurs the pixels. And I'll give you an example back here on this picture. If I blur, we'll zoom in. You'll see it'll start to blur it out. You can see it's getting a little bit blurred. It takes time. It's a real subtle tool, and I'm not doing it too much. I'm gonna put it on normal, but it kind of will blur it out. Okay, so again, it's another way to kind of fine tune, and you can kind of get in there, and you could probably do kind of a radial blur like we did on those others, but it's a way of doing. Likewise, under here is the sharpen tool. So if you want a certain area to be sharper, you can kind of just kind of, and you see as I'm drawing or painting over, it's bringing out those pixels. Right, so that was before, that's after, right? You can see that's before, and then we put this back in, it's gonna pull those pixels crisper. So again, depending on what you're trying to do, those are kind of cool tools, the blur and sharpen. Again, these are ways of refining and finessing the photographs. Okay, so you got to have a good picture and you got to have a good composition, and we'll talk about photography and composition, and those are really kind of the key elements. It's real hard to kind of change this if it's not shot right. Okay, and even things like this, I thought it'd be cool to take these branches. They're getting to me, they're a little bit much. Okay, so I could take them out. I could probably kind of, you know, healing brush some of it out, but at some point it might get to be too much. I don't know. I would have to try that and see, but it would be a lot to do. So compositionally, this may not be the best picture, but it's about trying. Now, the dodge and burn are really kind of sweet. The dodge will lighten, the burn will darken. So again, we did some of that in that raw file, but let's say I want to kind of brighten up over here on this picture, this kind of these trees. So I'm just going to kind of lightly go through, and I'm just clicking very quickly and very lightly in there. And I've got the midtones 22. So we're not doing too much at one time. And we come back over to this side, just to lighten a little bit. And you can see just kind of, it's real subtle, guys. And I got a big brush, so I'm moving pretty quick, but it's going to bring those areas out of the shadows just a little bit. Okay, just to kind of pull them up. All right. And then likewise, I can burn, meaning, okay, I got the sky is a little bit bright, maybe. I want to pull that out. Or I want to pull the El Capitan back here a little bit darker. It's very highlighted. So I'm just going to come back in and I'm burning it, pulling it darker. So in photography, there was, when you used to process film, photographers would dodge and burn, meaning they would lighten or darken areas in the darkroom. Okay, so they could chemically and physically work things out. So certain areas would be brighter or darker in the processing of the film. Okay, so that's what I'm kind of doing here. In this case, I'm darkening up the sky a little bit, but going on, and it's subtle. It's not like boom in your face kind of thing. And because I'm pretty down. If I push this up, you're gonna see it's gonna really push it up even more. You can see it's bringing the blues out a little bit more, but it's gonna get a little weird very quickly because I'm at like 100%. So both of these tools, the dodge and burn, both typically work well when you're not super high with them. You drop it down to 20, 25%. It gives you a little bit more subtlety. I think I'd rather take the time to kind of go over it a couple times than try to do it one time and screw it all up. And you can also kind of play with the different areas. The range is going to deal with the shadows more. So let me do the shadows. I'm going to dodge that. It's just going to pull out the shadows within that area. So it's not lightening everything. It's more the shadows that are composed in there. And the computer knows this. The Photoshop knows this. It's pretty amazing to do. And again, it's kind of going through. So it's like touching up as you go. And maybe I want to, I think I'm going to dodge out. I'm going to burn in this a little bit in here. I want to orange it up a little bit. So you can see I orange it up just by hitting the burn down here. Don't get too much, but we're going to play with that there. Okay. So again, we can adjust this photo. This is 73. I'm going to open the original again. I think because I didn't copy that. 973. I'm just going to open this up and copy. Can I do it? Oh, come on. It's already open. So it's already, all right, it's not gonna work because it's already open. So it just wants to just do it separately. Let me save as, and that'll let me do that. Save. I just want to show you the difference of what we just did there with a few minutes of dodging and burning. 97, 73. Okay, so here is the original. And here's when we kind of dodged and burned and played it up a little bit. So you can see it's a little bit more vibrant. We definitely pulled out the shadows in here. Now you can see how it's kind of grayed out and the shadows are getting lost. So by dodging and burning, we pulled those out. It's probably a little bit maybe too intense at this point. But I think this looks a lot better over here by far, right? We got a little bit more definition, and down here with the rocks in the water, we've got more definition. So I went too far with the sunset on El Capitan, but I think the forest itself and the water looks a little bit better. And again, it's just simply the dodge and burn. So these are kind of like subtle tools to kind of clean up things. So like we did the healing brush to kind of fix a bad spot, the dodge, the burn. The sponge tool kind of paints in a spongy area, and it's kind of more of a diffused way of looking at it. Okay, so it will do the same kind of thing, but it kind of diffuses. In this case, it's desaturating. Let me desaturate this a little bit. It's kind of a weird little brush, but it does it so it's, they say a sponge because it's so it's not solid color. It kind of mixes back and forth. Okay, so it's before the original, and here's the after. A little better. I toned that down, I think, a little bit there with the sponge. So these are all kind of tools: the blur, the sharpen, the smudge, the sponge, the dodge. These are all ways to kind of modify, but they're also good tools to kind of allow you to start to blend things. Okay, as you start to do more realistic paintings in Photoshop, getting away from photos and using photos as a background, and then kind of working them in. And again, I think from a gallery effect, let me just do this. I'm going to copy it. If we go to the filter, you know what, let me do this right. I'm going to make it a smart filter first. And then we're going to go to the gallery. And I'm going to go up here, turn those off. I'm going to get rid of those because they're kind of stuck in there. The cutout look, I think that I always like this. and turn it on. Okay, so what it's doing is kind of mushing, it's making these things that were solid colors or millions of colors into more solid colors. Let me just bump up the levels. I'll get a little more detail there. Okay, I'm just going to click OK. I know it's not perfect. We've got problems here. But if we look at this, you can see now it's become solid colors, and I can start to blend and paint with this. Before it was just a photograph. So this is the photograph. This is the cutout. And again, we're playing with it quickly, so it's not there. But let's say we've got here, and I'm going to want to put that color back in. So I've got the effects going, and I can just at this point rasterize the layer, which is going to bring it back into pixels. Okay, and then I can start to kind of paint that in. So I'm going to do, let me try to smudge real quick, actually. Let's see if I can do that quick. Okay, that's not going to work. So let me just go to paintbrush. So I want to get this color. I want to get this kind of dark color here. So two ways of doing that. One, I could go to my color picker and click, and I get the eyedropper. Okay. Another way is to actually use the eyedropper. Okay, up here is the eyedropper. These are kind of, I don't know, I never use those tools. And if I click, it shows you what was before and what's after. So it says black is my color, and this is giving you kind of a visual representation on the screen of what it's going to. So black on the bottom is where it was, and brown is on the top. And now we went from black to the blue. So I'm going to get that kind of orangey color, and then I can come back in here with just a regular brush, scale it down a little bit, and I can start to paint this in. Okay, fill this in the way I want. And then I might be able to come back in, and I could probably would have made it a little bit smoother, but I can start to bring in these elements and blend these together to give me the look and effect that I want. And it's more of a painterly kind of feel than it would be the photo feel, right? Their pixels are here, but they're not. And we're going to get into more of this also with Illustrator, but in here we're painting purely with pixels. In Photoshop, we're going to be dealing with vectors. Okay, so there is a difference from a visual standpoint where this is dependent on the resolution, meaning depending on what your resolution was, will be how big you can, in theory, make this painting. Whereas if we're in something like Illustrator, they are resolution independent, meaning it doesn't matter what that is because it's raster based, not pixel based. Okay, but the pixel based a lot of times will give us a little bit smoother feel as we're working, especially those that have, get to using with a Wacom tablet. It's kind of a nice way to kind of paint those items or paint those areas in. Okay, so we still have the picture itself, but at this point we're painting now with the brushes as opposed to just kind of manipulating the pixels themselves. Okay. Question. All right, so as we're coming down and you've got questions, let me know. So no class on Thursday, extra day. I think this should be my last day. I have to be off this semester, but I'll be putting up a video online on photo restoration work with Terry White. I think it's about 15 minutes long or so. So watch that between now and Tuesday. Work on the albums. Okay. If you have questions, let me know. We can go over those now. But you've got the 2 album covers, front and back for each one. One is your favorite artist, kind of a new version of a record for them. And then one is a remake from something from your mom, your dad, something like that, something that's one of their favorites. Okay. And again, we'll get this video up online. Let's see, a couple had some problems here, so we'll get the video up online for you guys to watch it if you came in a little bit late or such. So, questions? So checking their attendance. Questions here? Nothing, just so quiet.
None for me.
Okay. Anybody else? Looks like I got everybody attendance wise. Check. Okay. All right. So again, no class Thursday. Watch the video that I'll be putting up in between now and next Tuesday. Work on the projects. Projects are going to be due on the 14th, so we've got time. All right. And sometime again between now and then, I'm going to ask you guys to probably share your screen, look at what you're doing, and give you some comments and some feedback. Okay, because I normally would be doing that in class, would be walking around, but there's no walking around this way. All right, questions, guys? Everybody feeling good?
I do.
Okay, yes.
For my album cover, just for the album cover.
Mhm.
Is it okay if the design is kind of like simple?
Yeah, I mean, don't make it the the white album, with the Beatles where it's like nothing but white. I mean, the whole point is to get creative here with Photoshop.
Yeah, no, it's not like that. It's just like a photo, and just kind of like a best hits almost type deal.
Okay, do me this, work it up, and then what we'll do is next week we'll look at it. You can show it to me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that works
We'll
perfect.
share screens and we'll take a look at it and we'll give you a critique and we'll go from there.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. We'll see how it works. Others? All right, guys. Have a good weekend. Good rest of the week and a good weekend coming up. We will meet on Tuesday. Keep working at it. Keep using your Photoshop. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
See y'all next
Good week.
time.